They told me the Vethrak had broken 41 cadets in its last full run. They told me this the way you tell someone the weather, not to warn them, just to establish the facts of the place before you send them into it. I said, "What's the exemption threshold?" The greater, a keth, pale membrane skin drawn tight across a long skull, fingers jointed one too many times, looked at me the way you look at something that has asked the wrong question. He made a sound low in his throat that his translator rendered as completion of 20 sequential pull cycles at or above the posted load index. Then he made a second sound the translator rendered as no human applicant has reached cycle 9. I wrote the number down on the small card I keep in my left breast pocket, 20. I wrote it in my own handwriting, not the station's print, because I wanted to see it in a shape I recognized. "Thank you," I said. He did not respond. He moved away to process the 41 Keth cadets lined up at the rack's intake gate, each of them in the gray compression suits the compact issued, each of them tall and built like the compact built everything, long, efficient, adapted for exactly this kind of load. They glanced at me the way you glance at something that has wandered into the wrong room, not hostile, just categorically certain of the outcome. I put on my rack harness and stood in line. The Veth rack is what it sounds like. It is a long room on compact station Dural 9, built into a gravity multiplier column. The whole chamber sits at 1.9 standard, which is enough to make Keth cadets feel it, and enough to make most species file a medical exemption before they even step inside. Each cycle is a fixed sequence, weighted pull reps on the overhead bar, a load carry across the floor, a hold at the far end until the bell sounds. The station's automated system reads your biometric indices throughout: heart rate, cortisol analog, muscle fiber stress signal, and if any three go red simultaneously, the rack flags you as non-compliant and locks your harness at the station until a grader signs the release. That is the fail-out. You do not choose to stop. The machine decides you have stopped. The cadets called it the rack's mercy. Automatic fail-out means you cannot be accused of quitting. The bell sounded. Cycle 1 was easy. Cycle 3 was less easy. By cycle 5, I could feel the gravity in my back teeth, and the pull bar was slick with my own sweat where I gripped it. I was not the slowest on the floor. 2 of the Keth cadets had already developed the particular looseness in their stride that means the load is getting ahead of them. But I was not the fastest either. And when I completed the load carry and stood at the far wall waiting for the bell, I counted my heartbeat, because that is what I do when there is nothing else to count. 74 beats per minute, a little high for standing still. I wrote nothing on my card. I just adjusted my grip on the carry bar and waited. Cycle 6. 2 cadets locked out. The automated system chimed their harnesses, and they stood at their stations with the flat expression of people who had expected to stand there by cycle 10 and were surprised it was 6. The head grader moved down the line with his slate, noting their indices, making the sub-vocal sounds his kind use for record-keeping. Cycle 8, 4 more. Cycle 10, 7. I was aware of them the way you are aware of furniture. They were there. They were not moving. I was. I kept my tally on the card. Not of them, of my own cycles. Because the number I had written down was 20, and I had not reached it yet. The grader found me at the far wall during the hold phase of cycle 12. He stood in front of me with his slate, and he looked at my biometric display on the wall panel behind my head, and he made a sound that the translator rendered as, "Your stress indices are outside compact reference ranges for this cycle." "Yes," I said. "The system has flagged your data as non-compliant." "The system is using compact reference ranges," I said. "My species does not use compact reference ranges." Article 7 of the Compact Transit Accords, Supplement D, Physical Assessment Protocols. Species with documented divergent baseline physiology may request assessment against self-reported species norms, provided the request is filed before the assessment begins. I reached into my breast pocket. I filed it this morning. I handed him the copy. It was 3 paragraphs. I had read the accords the night before. He looked at the paper. He made a sound the translator did not render, something below the translation threshold, addressed to the other graders, not to me. Then he walked back to his station and made a notation on his slate. The bell sounded. Cycle 13. I have been asked, since, what it feels like. I have tried to give an honest answer, and the honest answer is methodical. You find the next thing, and you do the next thing. The pull bar is there, so you pull. The carry bar is there, so you carry. The wall is there, so you stand at it and wait. Your back makes sounds that backs should not make, and your hands have stopped telling you very much, and at some point the high note in your ears becomes part of the room's ambience, just another feature of the space. You note it, you adjust, you move. There is no moment of decision. You made the decision before you walked in. Everything after that is just execution. Cycle 15, 3 more locked out. 20 cadets remained on the floor. Most of them had stopped looking at me by this point, which I took as a sign that my presence had changed from anomaly to ambient fact. I was now simply a thing that was also happening in the room, like the gravity column and the bell. That suited me. I do not need to be watched to keep moving. 1. Cycle 16. The load index stepped up. The rack does that. The posted regulation says the index increments by 8% at cycles 8, 12, and 16. I had read that too. My arms registered the increment. I noted it and adjusted my grip and kept moving. Cycle 18. 11 left. My card said 18. I crossed off the number and wrote 19 underneath it. Cycle 19. 6. One of the remaining cadets, young I thought, though Keth ages read different from their faces, looked at me from his station across the floor. He did not look away when I caught the glance. He was the only one who kept eye contact. I did not know what he was reading in my expression. Probably not very much. My face does not give a great deal away when I am working. The bell sounded. Cycle 20. There were 4 of us on the floor by the time the final hold phase began. 3 Keth cadets at their stations and me at mine. My back had stopped speaking to me in language I recognized, and my grip was operating on a kind of procedural memory that lives below anything you would call thought. I stood at the far wall, and I held the carry bar, and I waited for the bell. It sounded. I set the bar down. I straightened up. This took a moment longer than it should have, and I took the moment, because there was no regulation against taking a moment. I walked back to the intake gate, and I stood in front of the head grader's station. I would like my tally sheet, I said. He looked at me for a long time, long enough that I became aware of the other graders looking too, and the cadets who had locked out earlier, standing at their stations still in their harnesses, and the young one who had watched me through cycle 19, who was watching me still. The head grader's fingers moved across his slate. He printed the tally sheet. He held it out without speaking. 20 cycles. Load index, compliant. Fail-out events, 0. Assessment result, threshold met. I folded it in half and put it in my breast pocket next to the card with the number on it. Thank you, I said. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard the sub-vocal sounds beginning. The record-keeping sounds. The sounds between graders. Low and layered in the way Keth speech layers when there is something to be decided. I did not speak their language well enough to follow it. I did not need to. The exemption credit went through 2 days later. Standard processing, no additional review requested. I was back on logistics duty at my posted station before the compact's shift rotation changed. The young cadet sent me a message through the station's internal system. It was 4 words in Keth script. The translator gave me, "What is your world?" I sent back the designation, Class 12, on the formal registry, though I have always thought that number undersells it. He did not reply. I did not expect him to. I went back to work.